Hey everybody, it's Kathi Alessandra, your Yes I Can coach, and I am here with an episode of Yes I Can Living with my very special friend, Kathi Laughman. Now, before we get into our interview, just again, make sure that you have subscribed to our magazine. She's actually one of our featured writers at the magazine, and you are going to love this interview, and you're going to want to connect with her further and read her articles. They are always the bomb. Anyway, yesicanliving.com, and you can subscribe for free to get our weekly email newsletter, as well as anything that we do that is print. So without further ado, today we have Kathi, and with over 2 decades of experience in business strategy and systems, Kathi Laughman is a respected voice in leadership circles. In 2009, she founded the McKinsey Circle, a development and strategy advisory agency built around the need for continued relevance in the rapidly changing world of entrepreneurship. Kathi works alongside her clients as their possibility partner to create legacy-centric lives and businesses based on her proprietary framework for strategic learning, living, and leading. Her clients and community realize more value from the rest of their stories than they ever dreamed possible. She is also a best-selling author, an inspirational speaker, and frequently featured expert and member of the Forbes Coaches Council. And her latest book, Adjusted Sales, What Does This Make Possible, is available on Amazon. So when she is not writing, guesting on a podcast, or working with today's leaders, you will find her in her pottery studio. So much fun. And venturing off to Alaska to visit family. So Kathi, welcome to today's podcast. I appreciate you spending the time with us.
Thank you. It's so much fun to be here.
I know, right? Exactly. So I want to talk a little bit. You've got, McKinsey Circle, you've got possibility partners. And what I really want to talk about today was kind of this new thing. So this pivot, this need that you've seen in the world, really. So let's talk a little bit about how you started that. The doing good is good for business, and where that came up and what you're doing with that.
Sure. Well, when I started McKinsey Circle, it was for the reason many people in corporate America started businesses. They lost their jobs. So I lost mine back in 2009, and I was trying to decide what to do. And so I decided to, talk about being a yes, I can woman. It was like, well, you can't depend on the economy, so you better make your own, right? Mm-hmm. So that's when McKinsey Circle was born. But to be really candid, I was really struggled to find how I wanted that to show up in the world. There's so many things. I'm kind of what people would call a generalist. So I didn't have an accounting specialty. I didn't have a sales specialty. I didn't have one of those really like, oh, that's what she does. Because everything I did was around the logistics field and figuring stuff out, right? Just what's the deal and figuring stuff out. So it took a long time for me to say, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to, how do you want to do this? And how do you want to show up in the world? And what do you want your business to be about? And I started, really looking at, what do I care about? And I looked at some of the things that I do routinely and what my values were. And I found that giving back was something that was really important to me. And in fact, even where I was in my corporate life, I found myself drifting towards, what are we doing? And we came up with a program there for that. And I just really, even as a consumer, I was constantly seeking out companies that if I did business with them, it did good in the world. And so I thought, okay, what is that? I started pulling on that thread, right? Mm-hmm. And I started pulling on that thread, which is often how we get to where we need to be. And I discovered this whole world out there of businesses doing good. And then I got really intrigued with all of the things that you were finding, that doing good is good business, and Sir Richard Branson, and he got with the UN, and there were so many things that were coming out. And I was really immersing myself in those studies. And I thought, hey, this is something I can get behind. I love this idea of helping businesses do good. And then I thought, okay, I looked at there's all the reasons that a company would do that. And then I came across this statistic that just floored me. And that was this: only 5% of what we would call probably charitable giving today comes from businesses. The majority of it comes from foundations, from individuals, from nonprofits, that sort of thing. Very little of it is coming actually from businesses. That number just floored me because I thought, this doesn't make any sense, especially when you think about small businesses and how impactful they are.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized it's because we've never systematized this. We've never, and which is a lot of what I've done my whole career, is how to create systems around things, right? And so I started studying that. And what I found is a study that said, if this is so good, if doing good is so good for business, why aren't more businesses doing it?
Mhm.
And there were 4 basic reasons that when they surveyed 1,000 companies that they had identified as saying, we'd like to do good. We'd like our businesses to have some way of intentionally giving, but we're not doing it yet. And so they asked them, why not? And when they asked them why not, and they came back with the reasons in terms of why they weren't, and there were 4 reasons. And as I looked at those reasons, and I thought, I can solve those.
Mhm.
I can help them get past those roadblocks. Number one, because their very first reason, in fact, 60% of them, what they said was the reason they don't is they don't know how to start.
Yes, right.
Right?
How do you take that first step? Yeah.
They don't know how to they don't even know how to start. So we've got a framework that says this is how you do it. This is how you get started. This gets you on the path. And then there was lack of time. 50% said, I'm wearing so many hats now, I can't possibly take on another hat. I can't do more than I'm doing now. And I found it interesting that the first 2 had nothing to do with money. It wasn't about I can't afford it. It was, I don't know how to start and I simply don't have time. So, okay, if you put a system in, it doesn't take time. It just becomes part of the fabric of how you do things. I mean, none of us asks ourselves anymore, if we have time to look at our P&L, or we have time to do this or that. We know what are the important things to do. It's part of our business owner DNA to do those things, right? So we came up with a way that we could do that. We could systematize it, even automate it to where it didn't infringe on their time. Then, of course, money did come into the equation. The third thing, 44% said it was limited funds. And this one I love because we get to introduce the power of small. We've just seen it just recently where you have Small Business Saturday, you have Cyber Monday, you have Giving Tuesday, all these things. They're not looking to make their millions from one person. It's the power of small. It's when you get everybody collectively focused on, let's do this. It's amazing what you can do with the power of small. And so that's part of what we bring too, is how do you do this without breaking the bank? And how do you make sure you're tying this only to things that it makes sense to tie it to, even from a financial perspective? And then, of course, the last thing, which, doesn't come as a surprise, is lack of trust. There's just something in the fabric of society today is trust is always going to be a factor. But in our program and the way we've put this together, we have 7 different giving models, 7 different giving stories, we call them, that you can look at to adopt for you. And every single one of them is so specific to you, and the way you partner, that trust factor just dissipates. So it became, listen, I love this. I love what this means. I love what this stands for. I think we can move the needle on that number. I think we can get way more than 5% of our businesses giving. And so I just set a goal for myself. Starting in 2022. I'm 66 years old, and I've said by the time I'm 76 years old, I want to have helped 1,000 companies adopt this model, and that doing good is good for their business, and they're actually doing good every day in their business. And so I just said, that's what I'm going to do. That's how I want to spend this next decade of my life, making a difference by helping others make a difference.
Yeah. I love that. Awesome. And it's so important, right? And many people think about giving in their personal lives, like you mentioned, right? But then how do you put that into place for your business? And it doesn't have to be a huge process or a huge amount of money, like you were saying too. I mean, there's ways to do it, which I absolutely love. So as you have, come through this, and you're just kind of launching this, and you've been an entrepreneur for quite a while. You've got a lot of stuff going on. So what have been some of your biggest challenges as if you've gone through, maybe not with this, but in general in entrepreneurship, and how have you overcome them?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for entrepreneurs today is kind of like the biggest problem in giving. You're just not sure how to get started,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
It is, there's, we have so much information coming at us, right? If you were to go Google how to be an entrepreneur, and first of all, the term itself is so hugely misunderstood. I mean, it's like, how to, just think about, just go Google how to start a business and how to, and what's the number one question they're going to ask you? Well, what kind of business do you want?
Mhm.
If you don't know the answer to that question, it's really hard to get started.
Right.
And I think that was probably my biggest issue, was I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to make a difference in some way. And so I had to try a lot of things on. I believe personally that life and business, all of it together, melded together, is you just take it as one grand experiment.
Mhm, mhm.
And you stop thinking in terms of success and failure, and you start thinking in terms of, let me try this. And
Mhm.
so as soon as I shed this idea that I had to have this perfect idea, and just gave myself permission to start pursuing things and see where that took me, it
Mhm.
became so much easier for me. It became, oh, that worked, that didn't work, that kind of worked, that almost worked. So what was that subtlety that maybe stopped it from working, right? And I think that's really, to me, has been the biggest takeaway lesson for me since I started, is to not even see failure as failure.
Mhm.
To me, failure is you quit trying,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
right? Failure is just, because what's the opposite of success? It's not failure.
Right.
It's that you stop trying. And so
Right.
to me, I just kept saying, okay, all right, that didn't work. I'm going to try this. I did home staging. I did real estate photography. I did so many things. I can't even begin to tell you all the things that we experimented with and thought about doing. And then at the end of the day, it came back to, what do you really, it came back to me for, like, it's a legacy. What story do
Mhm.
you want people to tell about you? When people talk about you, what do you want them talking about?
Right.
And as soon as I really got onto that, it started becoming really clear that the third act, or the second mountain, as they talk about in the book, almost always comes down to this: how do you make your life count? And for me, that's, how do you create a business that counts?
Mhm. I love that. And the whole idea of just getting started, right?
Yeah.
Good can be good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. We all, in fact, that can be the greatest excuse of them all, to not really jump into whatever is next. And as we're moving here in 2022 and seeing what's next and where we're going, where we're building, right? Just try. Just give it a
Yeah.
whirl.
And I've all been a firm believer, as I work as a possibility partner, because that is part of my, people talk about genius zone. If I have a genius zone, which I'm sure we all do, but whatever mine might be, it would be that I see possibilities where other people don't. I just see things there that, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you tried putting this with this? Things go together that you never would put together, kind of thing, right? And that's then where I've really been able to shine, if you will, even in my life in corporate America. And so I think it was just a matter of really that experimentation
Mhm,
and
mhm.
getting there. But I firmly believe that we try, so we try to keep binary choices. Do I want A or B? And I'm like, you can never, the right choice is never between one and two.
Mhm,
You,
mhm.
if you're having trouble making a choice, it's because you haven't figured out the right choices yet. And so
Right.
you need to keep looking for the choices. But here's what I've learned: our choices live in our actions. You have to take a step before you can see the choices, because some of them don't reveal themselves until you move to the next place. And then, oh, that I can take that step now. Okay, now I can take that step, right? You don't,
Right.
that old saying, I think that might have come from Martin Luther King. You don't have to wait till you see the whole staircase, just take the first step.
Step. Yeah.
That's really what it came down to for me, was just letting each step reveal itself as it came.
Yeah. I love that. So let me ask you this, because I know you do a lot of reading. I know you love books, right? And
Yes.
And just in the way you're talking, right? I mean, there's clearly you are inspired. Well, you're inspired in what you're doing, but you've been inspired also
Yes.
by others and by reading and stuff. What is the, where do you get, let me go to there. Where do you get your inspiration? Who are some of your favorite authors or leaders or teachers that you look to as for leadership around this?
Well, there's many. I think the one that really sparked this for me was a company called Lavender Life. Believe it or
Okay.
not, Xander the Bunny. Xander is a bunny, and this family, it's a family-owned business, and they came up with Xander the Bunny. And it's stuff with cherry pods and lavender, and it's just the most scrumptious stuffed bunny, right? It's wonderful. And I saw an advertisement for it, and then I saw the story. Then I saw the Xander story. When you buy Xander, they donate a Xander to a child in foster care.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I just fell in love with that story. So that year for Christmas, every child I could possibly think of got a Xander, right? But they didn't just get Xander. They got the Xander story. I made sure they knew there was another child that got a Xander, so they could start themselves understanding the power of giving by giving, right?
Right.
So it started really with Xander, and then there were a few others. My daughter was born at 27 weeks. She had grade 3 hemorrhages in both eyes. She was supposed to be blind. We had some miraculous doctors, and of course God's hand that saved her vision, but she has struggled with vision her whole life. And so vision is a cause I care about. And I saw an ad for this company that said, would you shop blind? And it just so intrigued me. And I thought, would I shop blind? How interesting. And then the company is two blind brothers, and there's two brothers, and they have a very rare, interesting issue with their eyes. And they've started this company, and you literally shop blind. You buy the box and they send you the box. But what's in the box is the most marvelous, the softest, most incredible socks or t-shirt or whatever it might be. But they're challenging you to understand what it means. Would you shop blind? How would you shop blind? And there's tags on their stuff that's in Braille. I just fell in love with the ingenuity of, hey, we're not out there just begging for dollars, right? We're giving you value, but we're using the value you give us to create value. And so that's really, honest to God, it's the people that are doing this now that are my inspiration. One of the authors that I follow a lot is John Acuff. I just adore him. First of all, he's funny as all get out, but he's just one of these guys that he just has a great sense of self, but he's a very accomplished writer. And he writes on things like his books are really challenging to understand. They're called Start, Finish, and Do Over, right? I mean, his book Finish is why my latest book even got finished. But I met him and got to know him a bit. And then about 5 years ago, I had an email from him saying, would I join this campaign of 500 Lights Home? And I'd never heard of an author doing anything like that. And I thought, how interesting is that? Well, he has this, it's a place, it's a place where these women, they deal with women coming out of sex trafficking and getting them off the street and drug addictions. And you buy candles, and the candles that you buy are made by these women. It's their job, and they have a safe place to live. They have a place to work. And when we do this 500 Lights Home every year, annually, we do this now every year, that really is creating almost a full year of safe haven for a woman. Wow. And I love that they're doing that. But the very first conversation that inspired me to this was with Mark Victor Hansen. And this goes back a few years, even before the spark of the idea really fully bloomed. It was the seed that planted, right? You can always trace it back to, when did the seed get planted? And I was in a mastermind at the time, and he came and met with our mastermind, and we were having dinner. And he talked about, what do you do when what you do is in direct conflict with one of your core values? And I thought, wasn't that an interesting thing to talk about, right?
Right.
So he said, he's an environmentalist. So when he was doing Chicken Soup for the Soul, with Jack Canfield, which is how most people know his name. And they said, we're going to sell 1 million books. He's an environmentalist. Well, what do you have to do to create 1 million books? You have to cut down a lot of trees. He had an honest to God real issue with that for himself as to how did he reconcile those things. And so they put in place, they put something in place to where for the books that they sold, they would plant a tree. And they went into partnership with one of the foundations that does arbor stuff. And every time the books they sold, they planted trees. And that's how he dealt with it. And he said, you should always look for a way to give back, but you should look for a way to give back that honors what you value.
So what if somebody is listening to you and thinking, yeah, I really want to do this, right? And I really want to, I mean, you and I had a brief conversation about this and the idea that, the Yes I Can Women membership community, right? And for everybody who buys a membership, there is one that's given to a woman who needs it, right? So that was something that I was like, I'm still working on and how that all plays out. What is something, what would be the first step that somebody would take, or what would they need to think about if they really wanted to do something within their business, but they're just not even sure where to start? There we go. Where to start?
Well, I mean, where people start and where I start with them is excavating to the value that they want to honor. What is that? And it's generally comes down to one of three things. It has to do with a certain group of people. It has to do with a certain group of animals or something from the animal kingdom, or its environment. One of those three tends to be the thing that you care about, or the thing that's most closely associated with your business. Right. So you see a lot of chemical companies today coming up with what they do in the world to counter that. And so you'll see them doing a lot with the environment. In the logistics business that I'm in, you see a lot of trucking companies and things like that doing things to cut emissions and doing things like that. You'll see them very active in that. So some of it just becomes natural to what business you're in, but it really comes down to what your personal values are. Like I have an affinity for children in foster care. I don't know why. It's always been there. I've done volunteer coaching. My sister works with CASA. We had almost a Mayberry upbringing, except we had both parents, right? But I mean, we had kind of almost an idyllic childhood, but we both have a really tender heart towards foster children. And so I'm going to lean towards that. I'm going to always lean toward education because I'm an education fanatic and personal development and making opportunities for women. There's going to be something that for you matters to you. That's where you start. You don't start figuring out by how much can I give or how am I going to give it. You start with what do I want to sponsor? What is the good? What is the good that I want to see created? And then it starts growing out from there.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Love that. So what would you say, kind of going back to you personally, what would your definition of success be?
Well, I think my definition of success is that I'm better today than I was yesterday.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
Right. I mean, my measure of success is very internal, and to me, am I doing better today than I was doing yesterday? That really is it. I mean, I think that there's a lot of ways that you can define it, but for me, if I feel like I'm really living to my potential and I'm doing the best that I can with what I have in the moment, that's success to me. Some days that might not be a lot, but if that's the best I've got that day, that's a successful day.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. Very, very good. I'm sure there's people who are listening and, they want to step in, they want to do something. They don't know what, they don't know how, like I've reached out to you about myself. Right. And so if somebody wanted to connect with you further on this, where would they go?
Well, what I would suggest for right now, I would just go to the website, which is KathiLaughman.com or possibilitypartner.com. You can reach it either way. Whatever is easy for you to remember. Lofman Kathi is with an I and Lofman is with an AUGH. It's like, so sometimes possibility partner is easy for people. But anyway, if you go there right on the homepage, at the bottom, the post that's on the homepage, it talks about doing good is good business. And there's a link right there. And when you go to the link in that post from the homepage, it will put you on our mailing list, and that will get you into the fold and get you on the mailing list. And you'll start hearing about when the next workshops will be, what things are coming up, and how we can connect. Or they're obviously very free to send me an email to Kathi at kathilaughman.com, and I'm happy to chat with them and talk with them further. But I'm really excited. We've got some things coming up with Yes I Can Women. I've got some things coming up with you for December and for January. So I would also say, stay tuned to Yes I Can, and you'll probably find lots of ways to connect with me.
This is true. This is true. And as I said, she is one of our featured experts on the website too. So be sure to check out her articles. She writes some great articles. Her your newsletters are coveted by many people on a twice weekly basis, right?
Yes,
I know the kind of response you get with all that. So, and I think, this is an important topic, because I think there's many women who want to be able to give back within their business. They're not sure how, to start. They think it needs to be cash. And this day and age, there are so many different ways. I love the fact that, if it ends up being in alignment with what your business is, or, the three areas that you were talking about. So I think there's lots of possibility there. Yeah. And I think it's important for you guys to reach out to her and explore that for you, right? Giving back is, there's the giver's gain from BNI, there's lift as you climb from you women. There's giving in general, right? There is something about having that philanthropic heart, and being open to do that with your business too. So
businesses have legacies too. That's what I tell people.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So let me ask you my final question that I ask all the interviews is, what makes you a Yes I Can woman?
All the times I failed, I guess.
Yeah.
And just kept getting back up, right? All the times that I said, okay, that didn't work, what's next? Mm-hmm. And just the fact that I kept doing that. I always feel like an embarrassment of riches in terms of my life, because I feel like I've led a life that's just been so filled with grace. I could look back and say, well, yeah, but you lost your job and you had health issues and you had this happen and your daughter was in intensive care and you had this and that. But you know what? Every single one of those ended with miracles and ended with, so much more than I could have ever dreamed. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I say, there's more value in the rest of your story than you ever dreamed possible. I don't believe that just for you. I have lived that for me. And every time I turn the corner, there's just so much more there. And I think that's what makes me a Yes I Can woman.
Yes, it does. Well, and you certainly are, Kathi. It's been a great pleasure interviewing you today. And thank you for sharing all the information about this. Doing good is good for business, and stepping into that in your next decade here, like you were talking about, right?
It'll be fun.
Exactly. So be sure to connect with Kathi. She is on social media, but Kathi Laughman, I'll check the show notes on the website or in iTunes, and I will have the websites there for you to be able to click and connect with her. Kathi, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Yes I Can Living. And until next time, I hope you live your Yes I Can life. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.